Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our first ever Dyson Leads event, which today will feature a panel discussion on the topic of conscious consumption, embracing marketing to boost loyalty and impact. I'm really excited to report that we have 780 people attending this virtual forum, which is way more than I thought, and I'm very, very excited about that. My name is Harry Kaiser, and I will be the moderator for this very interesting panel. I am the Associate Dean for Academic Affairs, as well as the Gellert Family Professor of Applied Economics in the Dyson School. As I mentioned, we have a fantastic panel of Dyson alumni and faculty to present their views and expertise on this topic of green conscious consumption. So over the next hour, we will explore how companies are shifting business models to embrace green marketing and what current research findings show about conscious consumerism. Increasingly, consumers are more conscious around and increased awareness of the impact of their purchasing decisions on the environment and their health and life in general. With the climate crisis looming, conscious consumerism can curb the effects of human waste and pollution, as well as reduce problems for future generations. Relatedly, green marketing strategies involve how companies are committed to implementing and practicing sustainable business methods and corporate social responsibility in response to conscious consumerism. We are so fortunate today to have Dyson alumni Drew Frazier and Stephanie Evans on our panel today. Joining them will be Suzanne Shu and Shanjun Lee. Both are distinguished Dyson faculty members. So the structure of today's discussion will be divided into two main parts. First, each panelist will speak for about 5 minutes on issues surrounding green marketing and conscious consumerism. After each speaker is finished, we will then open it up for Q&A from the attendees. So if you can think of a question during the speaker's presentations, please type it in the chat link and I will present it to the speakers during our Q&A session. So those are the ground rules. So let's get started. Our first speaker today is Drew Frazier, who is a 1990 graduate of the Dyson School. Drew played football at Cornell and was indeed the captain of the football team in 1989. He has over 30 years of leadership experience with some of the world's leading consumer product companies, including Method, Whirlpool, Clorox, and Procter & Gamble. He was the CEO of Method for 10 years, leaving in 2019 after the company's sale. Under his leadership, the people and environmentally friendly home and personal care company was one of the fastest growing CPG companies with expansions throughout North America, Europe, and Asia. Currently, Drew acts as director, investor, and advisor to high growth, mission-driven category disrupting companies. So take it over, Drew.
Thank you, Harry, and good morning to everyone. It's wonderful to have the time to chat with you a little bit today. Like many students leaving Dyson, I headed to Manhattan, but instead of banking, I chose diapers and toilet paper and peddling them to the bodegas of in the likes of Brooklyn and Bronx. And I had a lot of fun and enjoyed a lot of success in consumer packaged goods, but at about 15 years into it, I decided I needed to do something a little bit different. I wanted to be a part of a company that was faster pace, having a different and better impact. And that's where Method came along. And Chris, if you could cue up the slides, that would be great. I can just start chatting along here as we wait for those slides to get up. So when when I joined Method, and when we started the Method journey, there was kind of three things going on at the time. One, there was we called a sea of sameness, and where you had all products from different manufacturing brands that really looked the same. And in fact, there was no innovation and no growth. So if someone came out with a lemon scented, everyone came out with lemon scented. If orange got hot, orange came out. And so it was really just, in fact, all the bottles were exactly the same. Everyone used the same stock bottle to try and keep costs down. Secondly, there was kind of this rise in the awareness of health and wellness. People started really taking inventory of the things in their home and recognizing that they could using toxic chemicals to clean the very counters that their children were eating off the counters or their pets were laying on the floor. And so if you think about that in combination with a trend of lifestyling the home, people started moving their laundry rooms from the basement up to the main floor, from the garage into the main floor. And people started expressing themselves in different ways. And it really created this opportunity to say, for cleaning products, to remove it from beneath the sink and to move it to the countertop. And that's where kind of Method came in. And we decided to take a very different approach. All the green cleaners at the time, although they were pioneers and folks that kind of paved the path for bringing awareness and better solutions to cleaning the home. I just want to check. Do we have the slides up? You can. Okay. So sorry. So I can't see what slide we're on, but if we could go to the slide where it talks to, I apologize, where it says how Method disrupted home care. And you can see that the original players, we called them white bottles with green leaves, or sometimes they had a planet on it. And we knew that we needed to do something a little bit more disruptive. And you can see the color and the vibrancy. We wanted to get people's attention. And we knew that we had to bring broader desirability to our products, other than just the fact that we're green. If we wanted to scale our brand, if we wanted to get people's attention when they're in autopilot going down the aisle, we had to do something different. And that's where we kind of came in with our 4 pillars. And if you could go to the next slide with the 4 pillars, you can see we equally put energy and attention into all 4 pillars. And that was our differentiation. It was our ability to achieve along all those lines. So the consumer would grab our product off the shelf, and maybe they would buy it because of the color, or maybe they were smelling with their eyes and they saw the vibrance and the fragrance, and they saw the bottle that was interesting and unique. And so they would bring it home and they would actually use it to clean their counters or their hands or their clothes. And they recognized that it would actually work. And these are categories where people did not want to do things twice or 3 times. They wanted to get it done the first time. And so they would understand that. And then they would understand that, wow, this product is non-toxic. Wow, this product is good for the planet. It's made of 100% PCR. And then to get to know our personality a little bit. And we often called that the front door and the back door loyalty. So they enter through design and fragrance and color, but have the loyalty of this product really worked, and it was good for my family and good for the world. And so the consumers would understand that. And they would often start looking through the product, through the bottle, into the heart and soul of the brand and the company. And that was becoming much, much more important every day with consumers and as they evolved. And if Chris, you could go to the next slide for the force for good. This was our heart and soul. It was about making an impact. It was about converting as many consumers as possible to green products, making it desirable. And we did that through a lot of different things, but we wanted to make an impact. We wanted to have an influence. We wanted to have a voice. We took stances and we took risks. And to be honest with you, as an upstart company with a brand without a lot of legacies, and not a lot of moving parts as some of the larger companies, we could do things that others weren't doing. And we could be very transparent about it. We could be authentic about it and honest. And so we did things like over 15 years ago, we were one of the founding B Corp companies. a great certification and validation process that really looks through a deep auditing process to all your practices on how you treat your team, how you treat your consumers, how you treat the planet. And then to be proud of the moment that we actually got one of the best in the world, not too long ago. We did things like finding a way to be 100% post-consumer recycled packaging. And we were doing that in 2009. You're seeing a lot of the big guys just talking about it now. We had our first bottle made from ocean plastic in 2012. So things that we're proud of, but it was starting the conversation. It was because of our smaller size, we could do things with suppliers that say P&G or S.C. Johnson couldn't do, because we could do smaller runs. And so things that we were proud of and having conversations about. And if you turn to the next page, Chris, that's how we talk to our consumers. First of all, we didn't call them consumer, we called them advocates. They weren't just consuming our products. We wanted them to love our products so much that they became advocates in an army for talking about our products. And really, I talked about our first way, which was winning with the bottle, winning at shelf, or winning at that landing page. But importantly, it was about earned media. We couldn't afford to be on TV. We couldn't go in the backyards of the big guys. We had to let our story be told. We let the product speak for itself, but let the storytelling bring to life what our green story was, our credentials, how we got started. I'll give an example later with our factory, but those are the ways in which we could compete effectively, tell stories that others could not, that brought, again, authenticity and transparency to what our brand and our company was all about. And as you can kind of tell in this kind of piece, if you go to the next slide, the benefit blueprint, we had what we called a yes and culture, and a mentality that cleaners could be eco-friendly and they could work really hard. They could be beautiful and they could be cost effective. We could bring items to market fast, but also predictably. We could be artists at times and we could be operators. And you can see that represented in our benefit blueprint, which was ultimately our scorecard, our ambitions and our goals that we set forward for our company. And we put this forward in 2013. It was a triple bottom line. A lot of companies are talking about triple bottom line, but it was our ability to say we were going to be about healthy people, healthy planet, healthy business. And so we took this scorecard very serious. We built plans each year to deliver against these goals and kind of measured it relentlessly. I think the best example of how we brought the benefit blueprint, or our triple bottom line, together was, if the next slide, Chris, if you will, a quick story, if I'm doing okay on time, was we knew that we wanted to own the entire supply chain process and experience. We called it soil to shelf, and no one in the industry had done that previously. So we built a factory, and we chose to build a factory. And when we talked to our consultants, they said, hey, if you're moving, liquids in a bottle, put it in the Chicago area. And so, like a lot of manufacturers, they picked cornfields and kind of blew it out and built a factory. We chose to do something different. We chose to go into Pullman, which is in the south side of Chicago, into an area that was under heavy crime, heavy violent crime, heavy large unemployment. And we chose to do something bigger and broader. And so we built a factory on a brownfield. We built the first LEED Platinum certified company in our industry, second in the world across all industries. And it was a great reflection of our benefit blueprint because, one, it was built to be responsive. It was built to be able to have quick line changes, to bring innovation to market, respond to our customers' questions or requests. But also it was about using renewable energy and minimizing our carbon and water footprints. It was about employing the local community. Quick story was we went to pay our employees that joined the company who we required no previous work experience. They didn't have bank accounts yet because they had never had a job. And so we helped folks through that. And so It was a great story. I get goosebumps these days about how we were able to bring it to life. We had a greenhouse on the roof that brought fresh produce to what was designated as a food desert in the south side of Chicago, and also to support some of the local convenience stores. And so it was a great competitive advantage. It was a part of our brand. It was bringing our strategy forward. But when you do those things, it also brings a great cost advantage. So in order to make a bottle of method, we used to have to ship a bottle to get it labeled and then filled and then warehoused and then off to consumers. That was often 1,000 miles of movements. We did all that under one roof. We had our bottle manufacturer set up a shop in there. And so we did that all in 1,000 feet versus 1,000 miles. So it's a great example of how we're able to fully integrate our strategy into all the aspects of our business. So I'm going to wrap it up there, Harry. I appreciate the opportunity to share and maybe brag a little too much. Maybe it's some things I'm proud about. But look forward to more conversation in a little bit.
Thank you very much, Drew. And you have a lot to be proud about. It sounds like you've done some really innovative things. And so just a reminder, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. We'll field questions in a little bit, okay? So our next speaker is Professor Suzanne Shu. Suzanne is the John Dyson Professor of Marketing in the Dyson School and the brand new Dean of Faculty and Research in the Cornell S.C. Johnson College of Business. Suzanne is an internationally recognized researcher in the areas of marketing, behavioral economics, and consumer decision-making. An author and co-author of numerous articles, book chapters, and books across different disciplines, Suzanne was an NBER Faculty Research Fellow in 2020 and won the UCLA Anderson's Dean's Prize in 2017, where she was recognized for her outstanding faculty membership of PhD students. Recently, we were able to lure Suzanne away from the West Coast and back to Cornell, where she did her undergrad and her master's degrees. So with that, Suzanne.
Thank you very much, Harry, and real pleasure to be here. So I'm going to talk about a few different research projects that I've been doing just over the last few years. The first one is one that just got published this year since I've been at Cornell. So hopefully the slides are up. And the first one I want to talk about related to conscious consumption is a research project that we were doing around the concept of psychological ownership, which is a topic I've worked on for many years within marketing. And let me just explain what psychological ownership is. It's really a feeling of ownership that we think consumers build towards products, all kinds of different objects. And I want to make clear that it's distinct from legal ownership. And especially in this project I'm going to talk about first, which relates to sustainability and conscious consumption. We're really talking about targets of ownership that aren't owned at all by consumers. So we went to the most extreme sort of version of that we could find, which was public parks and lakes and sort of outdoor areas that are commonly owned in the economics literature. They'd be seen as common goods. And there's something called the tragedy of the commons, which is that people don't always take care of those common goods because nobody really has ownership of them. So what we wanted to do was see whether we could build these feelings of ownership, the psychological ownership, distinct from legal ownership, and whether that would change sustainability behaviors towards these areas that sometimes are under cared for. And we were able to do that using some of what we know about psychological ownership in other kinds of consumer goods. Things like just reinforcing this is your park. And in the case of the studies we were doing here and the research we were doing here, I'll mention this has been done in health context as well. There's a recent study on flu vaccinations that just telling people that your flu vaccine is waiting for you gets more people to go get that vaccination because they feel like it's theirs and they feel that stronger sense of ownership and that stronger engagement. Other things that we did in this project on sustainability, we went out to public lakes. So the picture is of a lake in Wisconsin where we ran some of our studies. We went out to ski resorts where we needed people to really be keeping the trails well maintained, cross-country skiing as a public park. And we would use interventions to build feelings of ownership in those environments. So for example, on the lake, we had people come up with their own name for the lake, or at the cross-country ski trails, we had people plot out their own path through the trails before they got started so that they got that stronger sense of engagement. And I'll mention back to something that Drew had in his presentation about thinking of consumers as sort of advocates, getting them more engaged and getting them to feel that stronger sense of ownership towards the products or the company, sort of a brand ownership. We find across all of our research that those stronger feelings of ownership can lead to better behavior. So for these public spaces like the lakes and the parks, people took better care of them, donated more, just put in more effort to really keep those spaces up. But this works on consumer products as well. Next slide, please. So the other project, the two projects actually that I want to talk about are being done here right now at Cornell with one of our great marketing PhD students, Alina Herr. So Alina and I have been working on thinking about how messaging around consumption and sustainability can affect the choices that people make. So this really is sort of green messaging or green marketing, and specifically looking at the timing of the messaging and how consumers think about the costs and benefits of green products. So the sort of top line, if you think about over time, let's say that we have a company that is incurring some sort of a carbon footprint, maybe by shipping, and the company can choose to take an action that offsets some of that carbon footprint and is more sustainable. And they want to talk about that benefit to consumers to get across what it is that they're doing. The company could choose to communicate that they've planted trees already before they've done the shipment as a way that the benefit comes before the cost of the environmental impact. Or they could communicate that they plant trees after they've done the shipment. And that's why I sort of trees on both sides of that boat right there. My environmentally friendly lighting has turned off. So one of the things we wondered was, does it matter the order in which those two things happen, the planting of the trees and the carbon footprint of the shipping? And what we find is over and over again through a wide variety of domains, when companies talk about the benefits happening after the cost, the environmental cost of what the company is doing, consumers feel much more positive about the product and will choose it more. And we're still working on why exactly that happens. Is it because it feels closer in time to the point when the consumer gets the product? Is it something about feeling more engaged in that process? But just that simple timing of the messaging of when the benefits and the costs occur seems to impact consumer choice. The second project, which is the lower half of this slide, we've been looking at the differences between choice and willingness to pay for environmental oriented products. And I think this comes up in some of what Drew talked about. It'll probably come up in some of what Stephanie's going to talk about. I know Sean Jun, when he gets to his talk, will mention like the Prius and the implications there where consumers think about sort of a conspicuous version of sustainability consumption. And what we were thinking about in this project, and we've been studying, is for environmentally friendly products, at the moment of choice, consumers might want to choose them because it helps them feel like they're a good green consumer, they're doing the right thing. But in terms of willingness to pay for that product, they tend to think more long-term, and the identity impact at the moment of choice doesn't necessarily last for the long term. And so what we're arguing is that marketers need to do more to make sure that the consumer continues to get that positive identity signal over time to be able to increase the value that comes with the product and be willing to pay a bit more for it. So whether it's the packaging that Method uses or the shape of the Prius that Shanjun will talk about, all of those are helping contribute to the consumer's identity of themselves as a green consumer over the length of time that they use the product to be able to strengthen the perceived value. So I'll stop there. Thank you very much. And back to Harry.
Thank you, Suzanne. That's very, very interesting. And I will just add a footnote saying that Suzanne joins a pretty good group of faculty members, both in the Dyson School and the College of Business, who are doing really innovative research on behavioral consumerism. And I'm glad that we're just getting both Shanjin and Suzanne to give a flavor for that research. So our next panelist is Stephanie Evans, who graduated from the Dyson School in 2010. Stephanie is a fashion retail enthusiast who launched her career in fashion buying at Macy's.com after graduating from the Dyson School. She has spent her entire career in the retail industry. More recently, Stephanie became the senior digital product manager at Tapestry, leading digital transformation initiatives in the e-commerce space, and the founder of leather goods brand Pomoja Bags, I hope I pronounced that right, launching in 2020 with a mission of creating timeless wardrobe pieces while driving social impact one bag at a time. Stephanie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Harry, for the lovely introduction. And yes, you did pronounce it right, Pomoja. So thanks, everyone. I'm so excited to be part of this panel. I'm very passionate about it. And I really want to focus on the power of the consumer, because we as consumers have the ability to hold organizations accountable to drive change. And quite frankly, from a business standpoint of things, not only is it the right thing to do, but it also positively impacts the bottom line. So I'm going to speak to 3 examples based on my current experience working in the fashion industry. You can switch to the next slide. As an entrepreneur working on Pomoja bags, I find that sustainability starts at the product development phase. It's the questions around what are the materials you're sourcing? Who are your sourcing partners? Are the individuals who are making your product being paid fair wages? Are the important questions that are so essential in the decisions that are being made. And in launching my brand Pomoja, it made sense to be thoughtful around these decisions and just the right thing to do from the get-go, as opposed to retrofitting and being called out by customers. So one of the questions that I wanted to focus on is around the materials that we're sourcing. So there's a common question that I get from customers around leather versus vegan leather. Am I offering vegan leather options? And I find myself educating them around the why I ultimately chose to do leather, at least for now. There's a lot of greenwash marketing that is going on around vegan leather, where back in the day it was coined as faux leather. It's now termed as vegan leather. And when you're doing your shopping, if the source of the vegan leather is not stated in those product descriptions, such as Pinatex made out of pineapple, Milo made of mushrooms, apple leather, the list is growing. It's most likely a plastic-based leather, which is an oil-based alternative that requires a lot of energy and a lot of water, and it's not biodegradable. And then just looking at the leather aspect of it, it is the byproduct of the food industry, and it is biodegradable. So one thing that I discovered while preparing for this panel is cactus leather. And I thought that was really interesting, and it looks very promising. So I actually ordered a swatch book so that I can start looking at it. So I'm definitely keeping an eye on what's going on in the market. What are other brands doing? What's the longevity of these leather alternatives? And we'll see what happens in terms of the product development phase. Next slide. So working on the tapestry side, I felt that I would not be doing it justice if I did not bring up the viral TikTok video that occurred in October, there was a TikTok video that went viral highlighting an industry-wide problem, showing a large number of Coach merchandise that was slashed in a dumpster. And interestingly enough, a few months prior, Coach launched the Relove program back in April. And it was the amplification of this video that drove Coach to make immediate changes to their policy. So what I have here on this slide are actually posts on Instagram that Coach shared to their customers. So they made an immediate change in terms of seizing the destruction of returns that are in store and really looking at ways to maximize the Coach Relove program. And so just to give you some background on the Coach Relove program, it's about upcycling products. So we have a lot of great vintage Coach bags that are out there, and they've been doing a great job in terms of repairing them and also upcycling product from prior seasons and putting them out on the site in the stores. And it really makes the customer feel like they're getting a unique product because it's pretty much a one-of-a-kind deal. Another thing that they have is a repair program where you can go into select stores and get products repaired that were previous Coach bags that you may have in your closet that you want to just revamp. And with the trends that are going on with vintage shopping, there's a lot of demand for that. So one thing that they're doing internally is looking at ways to really maximize upcycling and recycling of the products that we have. And if we can go to the last slide, I want to touch on the Black Lives Matter movement. There were two great organizations that have emerged as a result of the Black Lives Matter movement. One of them is the 15% Pledge, which was launched in May of 2020 out of an Instagram post by the founder, Aurora James, where she essentially called out that businesses are profiting off of the huge Black spending power of consumers, yet they lack representation of Black-owned businesses on the shelf space. And within this time frame, they've really moved mountains. The 28 retailers have joined this pledge, and they've shifted almost $10 billion in revenue to Black-owned businesses, which is so amazing, and they're just getting started. So there's a lot more to go, and they have a platform. So if you're looking for Black-owned businesses in terms of gifting, you can really find an exhaustive list of businesses that are posting their products out there. Another one is the Black in Fashion Council. They are working on a mission to make sure that there's equal representation in the fashion retail industry. And they have a lot of resources that are out there for creatives, for professionals in the industry. And really, there's a lot of great organizations that are popping up and making changes. And I know that's not only limited to the fashion retail industry, but I really wanted to highlight these two organizations that are doing a great job. And so in closing, I just wanted to emphasize that we as consumers have the ability to hold organizations accountable in terms of the decisions that they're making from start to finish, whether it's the product materials that they're sourcing, the wages that they're paying their employees, and the diversification of their employees and decision-making. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. That was a very interesting talk, and I look forward to some questions for you in the chat. So our final speaker today is Professor Shanjin Lee. Shan is a professor and holds the Kenneth L. Robinson Chair in the Dyson School of Applied Economics and Management. He serves as the co-director of the Cornell Institute for China Economic Research. He is also a research associate with the National Bureau of Economic Research and a university fellow at Resources for the Future. Shan's research areas include environmental and energy economics, urban and transportation economics, empirical industrial organization, and the Chinese economy. Shan, it's all yours.
Thanks, Harry, and it's great to be here. I guess we have covered a lot of grounds: consumer packaged goods, fashion, and pedalboards, I guess, or recreation. But we have to talk about cars. So that's I'll be doing. So just a bit kind of overarching background. Climate change is an existential threat to human race, and drastic immediate actions are required to address this challenge. So a lot of countries, in fact, 137 countries have pledged carbon neutrality, and many countries, including the United States, in red in the next slides, please, represent countries that pledge to reach carbon neutrality by 2050. Countries in purple, 2060, including China, the largest carbon emitters in the world. And India just recently announced their pledge of carbon neutrality by 2070. Strategies are being developed and deployed to reach these pledges. And a crucial strategy is to electrify the transportation sector. Next slide, please. Together with clean electricity generation. So here is a graph that shows the countries who actually set up goals to reach full electric or to electrify their transportation sector by a certain date. Norway, for example, announced the goal to reach 100% EVs by 2025 in 4 years. That sounds ambitious, but they are very well on their way to reach that, because the EV market share last year there was almost 80%. The Biden administration, as you know, announced a plan to reach 50% of EVs by 2030. That's a very hefty goal compared to the market share of 2.5% last year for EVs in the United States. China hopes to reach 20% of EVs in 2025, then 40% by 2030. Next slide, please. But how do we get there? The short answer is that all parties involved need to work really, really hard and smart. So governments need to set up the correct incentives to induce firms to innovate and to induce consumers to engage in behavior responses in order to address a host of barriers for consumer adoption of this new technology, including range anxiety due to the limited driving range of EVs and also the limited charging infrastructure, high battery cost leading to high acquisition costs of electric vehicles relative to gasoline counterparts, and also the issue of consumer awareness and perception about this new emerging technology and the potential cost savings to be delivered in the long run. Next slide, please. So that leads to the topic of conspicuous consumption that I would like to cover today. Conspicuous conservation is derived from conspicuous consumption, but applies to environmentally friendly goods. There are studies that show that some consumers purchase environmental friendly goods in order to signal their environmental attitude. For example, research showed that the unique design of Prius to consumers is worth about $400 to $4,000 because its ability to allow consumers to signal, to feel good, and to show that they are doing the part to protect the environment. And this is related to what Stephanie was mentioning. The sustainability sometimes starts with the design stage of a product. There was a 2007 Times Magazine article, the title of that is called Heroes of the Environment, the Toyota Prius design team, because that design team was very strategic in designing the product so that the unique design of Prius can allow consumers to show their devotion to the environment. Similarly, solar panels, because it's high visibility, are shown to be capitalized into home prices with a 3.5% premium. Many argue that the success of Tesla is partly also due to the fact that Tesla is synonymous with the electric cars, and the unique identity helps them on the market. Next slide, please. But can garments harness conspicuous conservation as well? The answer is yes, they can. Chinese government adopt this green plate policy starting from 2016, where EV drivers can get this distinctive looking green plate shown on this photo. And our studies show that this policy increased EV sales by about 17%. That's a surprisingly large effect given the low cost of this policy. So this green plate itself is worth about $3,000 in terms of its effect in inducing consumer demand for EVs. So I'll stop there. I look forward to chatting more. But the last slides, I want to bring your attention to things that we are doing at Dyson to advance sustainability, from teaching and research as well as outreach. I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shan. That was very interesting. I liked your last point about how much the green license plate was worth. It's kind of like climbing a mountain to get the T-shirt for it and wear that around so you can show off. Anyway, we have lots of questions, and I want to first thank all the speakers for really interesting stuff. And I won't share the speaker's last name, but I will share the questioner's last name, but I will say their first name. So the first question from Karen is, I find a lot of green products are fragranced. Many green consumers prefer no added fragrances or colors. Is that happening in the green products market yet? Drew or Stephanie, maybe.
Sure, I can offer some thoughts and hand over to Stephanie. Yeah, so that's been available for a long time. And so even though we led with color and fragrance as a way of bringing desirability to the broader mass market, we did offer it, free of dyes and fragrances. We used to call it our naked SKU. And there was a certain group of consumers that would definitely highlight and prioritize that.
Great. Comment from Jessica. I'll just read this and then I'll go to the next question. Wow, I live not too far from Pullman and had no idea it was there. This is really a great story. So kudos. Question from Audrey. With the ever-changing evolution of technology, can you give us an example of a modern day company that you can recognize as a disruptor, yet a force for good? That's a tough question. I can't answer it. Go ahead, Drew.
Yeah, so some thoughts. One of the things I love what's going on right now is so many more companies are community and employee centric. I think that's so important, and so I think that's a wonderful movement and focus that's getting a lot more traction given in the world today. As I think about enabling technology, I can bring it back to the cleaning space. There's a company and brand called Blue Land, which has taken really water out of the shipping model by late staging using tablets where the consumer can apply water at home. And so you're talking about shipping around small little pellets versus big jugs of water. So you late stage turn that into a solution that works. That technology's been around for a while. I think they've done a nice job with it. The big thing in consumer packaged goods is consumers' readiness. some consumers were just not ready to recognize, it's all water with a little bit of, activation and formula. And so now consumers are willing to make the effort, to make the impact and go through a little bit of an inconvenience because it's just that much higher on their priority. So it's wonderful to see that technologies that have been around for a while are just being more adopted more easily now.
Great. Anyone else want to share their thoughts on this? Question for, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Harry, that, and first of all, I want to give a call out to Stephanie and Drew, because I think both of them sort of fit in this category of being disruptors and force for good by going into these sort of spaces and introducing products that fit into these categories. And as Drew talked about, also with the building of the factory on the south side of Chicago, just an amazing story. But sort of following up from Drew's points, we're even seeing some of the really big companies go ahead with sort of encouraging consumers to change their behavior. And I know packaging has come up multiple times as questions in the chat. I was amazed that one of the companies that makes deodorants has now tried to switch to reusable packaging, where you just refill the little sort of cartridge that fits into it. And part of what encouraged me as a consumer behavior researcher was that in their discussion of why they did it, it was not just the sustainability aspect, but also giving consumers something that they felt they could own and was something that they could sort of keep with them instead of living in this disposable world. So I do think even the bigger companies are starting to, who have historically created a lot of this waste and this packaging, are starting to realize that there's more opportunity to do exactly what Drew's talking about, of helping consumers sort of refill and reuse packaging, and also looking at it as a way to build a stronger bond with the consumer at the same time.
Very good. Thanks, Suzanne. Anyone else? Okay, there's a question from Ed. I will join the Green Star Council in January, and a large concern I will bring up is plastic waste. Can you tell us how the e-cover model ensures that their used plastic containers are recycled without adding to CO2 emissions? Anybody care to offer their thoughts on that? It might be out of our realm of expertise, but it's an interesting, very interesting question. That brings up maybe a more general question is, what are some of the unintended consequences where you're trying to do good and you do have some unintended consequences that not all your good actions are good. Some of them have negative repercussions. And I'll answer my own thought there. There's been a lot of work done on local foods and stuff like that. And there are actually some analyses that have shown that there's more food miles in local food than there is in some of the national brands. And it's kind of an unintended or unintuitive kind of result, but it is something that, sometimes our best intentions don't really result in the best outcomes. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, Harry, just a small example. Definitely, understanding upstream and downstream implications is so important, but in our desire to make our products look beautiful, when the juice wasn't beautiful, we would use colored plastic early days to make it look beautiful on the shelf and fit within our brand. But as we soon discovered, and is now more common knowledge, that doesn't get recycled. And so it took us a little bit of time to figure that out. So then we went to a wrapped bottle, which could be quickly turned off like a lot of packages do now. And then that clear bottle could be properly recycled. So you definitely make mistakes. And we always had a mantra of progress, not perfection, was a way that we could always get off the mark and move quicker and make a little bit of a more positive incremental impact.
Yeah, as we enter this, a lot of it is trial and error, and we only learn by doing. So I think that's just a natural sort of result that we should expect.
And then to add to that, also just from a product development perspective with my own brand and learnings, I ultimately decided to source out of the country in Spain because they're known for their great quality and leather goods. And a lot of luxury companies do production in the small town of Ubrique in Spain. And it's kind of a balance, you know, like there are opportunities for me to do it here in the United States, but then also it's about the shipping of the product and getting it here. And with the small quantities that I have, I'm air freighting and not necessarily doing cargo on a ship. So that's one thing that I have in mind as a small business, and things to consider in the future as I grow.
Great. There's a comment for Suzanne. I'm concerned that consumer education only goes so far. Regardless of how careful consumers are, the packaging of products when discarded, however conscientiously recycled, still end up polluting landfills and water bodies.
So I think this is an excellent comment, and I'll point out that I think the way we see the research that we're doing is not so much consumer education to try to get consumers to be more knowledgeable about sustainability, but more trying to help the firms like Drew and Stephanie who are doing the right direction that we want for sustainable products and helping them make their products sort of more appealing to consumers in ways that will help those messages resonate better. It's a marketplace, right? And there's supply and there's demand, and the firms can do only so much in creating these new products that help reduce packaging and help move things forward. As Harry and Drew were just talking about, and Stephanie was talking about, right? Like one step at a time, we are trying to make these improvements on the firm side. And what we're hoping is that we can get a response from the consumer side to encourage that firm progress. I think the other thing I'll mention with the first project that I talked about, where we were trying to get people to be more conscientious about taking care of public spaces, is sort of the downstream effect of if there is going to be litter, if there is going to be plastic getting in the way of our waterways, is there more that we can be doing to help all of us chip in to take care of those spaces instead of having to depend on local governments or regulation or other sort of more forcible hierarchies to come in and take care of it for us. So it's not so much about education as trying to sort of nudge customers into the direction that we think is the right way to move on this.
Precisely. Here's a question for Shan. Question from Marlena. I have a question about depleted batteries. If all transportation is electric, what will be done with the depleted batteries that can no longer be recharged?
Yeah, that's a great question. There is, it's a big concern in terms of the kind of a life cycle environmental impact of EVs. A large part that has to do with batteries that are no longer to be recharged. So I think research is still, this is really a very active area of research in terms of the engineering, from the engineering side, in terms of how to actually recycle or reuse some of the components in the battery. And of course, another big part is in terms of the source of electricity usage. So all these are really fast-moving areas in terms of research. So I guess we have to see whether really companies and researchers can come up really innovative solutions to address this issue.
Excellent question. Question from Margaret. We have recently been given a heads up by the media about the possible environmental costs of growing trees for rayon. How clean, sustainable is the growing and manufacturing process for vegan leather, and how do consumers find out? Stephanie?
Yeah, so this one is an interesting question, and there's not a lot of visibility around the manufacturing process for these vegan leather alternatives right now. And that's one of the reasons why I'm kind of holding off in terms of adopting. But as I mentioned earlier, with the traditional faux leather, vegan leather option that's made of plastic, we do know that that one is costly in terms of the environmental impact. But again, in terms of understanding the apple leather, Milo made of mushrooms, Piantex with pineapple, and the cactus leather, it's still in the air in terms of understanding what's going on there. And if the demand grows for these alternatives, we will see instances where these items are being harvested for the purpose of manufacturing those alternatives.
Thank you, Stephanie. Keep your questions coming. We're running low on questions, so I'll ask a question. How does the introduction of conscious products, pro-environment, pro-animal health, whatever, how does that affect conventional products? And is it fair? Is there a stigma effect, for example, that's being introduced that can reap havoc for the existing products?
I would say there is a stigma, just based on my experience with leather goods that's happening, where there is a growing demand for the vegan leather options, the alternatives, and they're not finding leather as their initial choice. So there's the marketing behind it, the education that needs to occur on the why we are selecting to continue the use of these materials and the longevity of the materials, and also just the continued research that's going on in terms of supporting ships, as opposed to making those decisions around using, for instance, the vegan leather as my first choice. So there is just a lot of havoc that's going on with leather nowadays. Mm-hmm. And also people are thinking about it with shoes. And it's very hard to manufacture shoes with a vegan leather. Leather, the core source from cows and cattle, has always been that source, or a fabric alternative, because of the flexibility, how it bends. You're wearing those on the ground, running them down, and you need to have something that is a better quality alternative. So it's definitely interesting how things are shifting in this industry, especially with fashion.
Thank you, Stephanie. It's very interesting because my own research has shown there is big stigma effects from conscious products, and even from things that are not so necessarily bad for you, like non-GMOs versus GMOs. I mean, the science has shown GMOs are totally healthy. They're not harmful to consume, but there is a major stigma when you introduce a non-GMO product to the market.
And then I'm also thinking about the food industry. Mm-hmm. Gluten-free alternatives. There are individuals who have a gluten allergy, but then it's increased the amount of gluten options that are out there, which are great, but there's nothing wrong with gluten in your diet. So we're seeing that across the board in multiple industries. And it's great that we're questioning it, and we're just being informed and educated about the changes that are going on.
Great. I got a question from Kat. Kat is a first-year Harvard Business School student and went to Cornell for her undergrad. I'm working on a sustainable fashion startup. Do you have any advice for differentiating yourself in a crowded market when most consumers just focus on how the product looks?
And I'm on the same boat right now. and I'm actually talking to a coach who has been working in different industries, and it's sort of interesting to bounce ideas off of each other. And one of the feedback that he provided to is your storytelling. You think about the 4 Ps from undergrad: product, price, place, and promotion. And it's just like, oh my gosh, this is so relevant today. Like, I have the product, I have the price. I'm sort of determining distribution in terms of place. Right now, it's solely e-commerce. And then promotion. That's my focus, because if the customer does not know about you and they don't know what you're doing, then how are they going to buy? And then in terms of marketing online, the average consumer needs to see your brand, your product 7 times before they make a purchase decision. And if you're a startup and you have a string budget, it's costly and it gets very expensive. Whereas these larger fashion brands, they're household names. Everyone knows about them. I mean, you can dream about them in your sleep. Everybody's wearing them. The celebrities are wearing them. I'm learning more about distribution and getting it into the hands of the right folks. Also in terms of marketing to Tier 1 press, and really focusing on that storytelling element. That's the key thing that I'm focusing.
Great. Well, it's a little bit past noon and we should wrap up, but I would like to just offer, if any of the panelists have any final parting shots, now is the time to do it. Anybody have anything they want to say?
Well, just say visiting us, and I'll hope to see you in Warren Hall, I guess. To the audience, of course.
Very good, very good. Anyone else? I will just remind the panelists to stay on for a little bit afterwards, because we were instructed to do that. But I want to thank I want to thank all the panelists. I've learned so much today just listening to the industry experience, as well as some of the new academic research. And thank you all 800 or so of you for showing up. We've taped this, so if anybody wants a copy of this, I think they'll be able to go to our webpage, the Dyson webpage, after today, and it will be up there. And please share, it'll be free. Please share this with anybody that you think missed it that might be interested. And then I'll finally say that look for future events. Our new dean, Jinhua Zhao, is instituting this and wants to make it a big part of our Dyson engagement with alumni and with the public in general. So look for future events. And I want to thank everybody that helped make this, including all the wonderful people at eCornell. So with that, have a great day, and thank you again, speakers.